Story 1. The ones who walk behind us. When I think back to that Halloween, it still makes my stomach twist. It was about 10 years ago, back when trick-or-treating was still the highlight of the whole year. I was out with my two friends, Alex and Ben. It was our very first year trick-or-treating alone, without Alex's overprotective parents shadowing us from house to house. For the first time ever, we were free, walking the neighborhood like every other kid, joking around, running from porch to porch, stuffing our bags with candy. I was dressed as a creepy clown, the kind with smeared makeup and a plastic bloody knife. Ben was a scarecrow, straw sticking out his sleeves. And Alex wore a white sheet and a jack-o'-lantern mask. Some kind of ghost pumpkin hybrid. We didn't ask questions. We started around 5 p.m. and everything felt perfect. Cool air, Halloween decorations everywhere. Groups of kids running from house to house. By 7:30, we'd filled almost half our bags. That's when things shifted. Across the street from us, two guys started to appear everywhere we went. At first, we assumed they just happened to be going the same direction, but something fell off. Every time we turned a corner, they somehow ended up turning the same corner. Every house we skipped, they skipped too. Every block we walked, they matched our pace from across the street. They weren't little kids either. They were bigger than us, maybe high schoolers, maybe even adults. Hard to tell with their costumes, but their movements were deliberate. We kept testing it. Turn left. They turned left. Turn right. They turned right. And they never seemed to talk. Never visited more than a few houses. Just walked and watched. Alex whispered that we should cut through the woods to lose them. It was stupid, really stupid, but we were kids, and panic makes bad ideas sound smart. There was an old gravel trail cutting through the woods, something everyone used during the day. None of us had ever been through it at night. But we didn't want to run into those two guys again, so we made the worst decision possible. We slipped off the sidewalk and hurried into the trees. The deeper we went, the darker it got. The canopy blocked nearly all the sky. The only light was a faint orange glow of town behind us, and even that disappeared after a minute. Soon we could barely even see the trail under our feet. Then we froze. Gravel, crunching under footsteps. Slow, heavy, crushing steps, echoing through the trees. We turned around and saw two silhouettes just a few yards from where the trail began, standing completely still, facing our direction. And then they started walking toward us. Ben swears one of them began running. We didn't even speak. Instinct took over. We bolted deeper into the woods, branches whipping our arms, costumes tearing, breath burning in our lungs. But the worst part? Whenever we stopped to catch our breath, even for a few seconds, we'd hear footsteps behind us. Fast. Always the same distance away. Never closer, never farther, like they were keeping pace on purpose. We were hopelessly lost. The trees felt endless. The path was long gone. Every sound felt like it was right behind us. Twigs snapping, leaves rustling, something big moving through the dark. 30 minutes passed before we stumbled out onto a random road. Panting and crying, our costumes ripped and our legs burning. By some miracle, the road led straight into Ben's neighborhood. We sprinted to his house, locked the door, shut every window, and stayed glued to the living room for hours. None of us said a word, terrified we'd hear anything outside. Around 2 or 3 a.m., we both jolted awake in the dark. Footsteps. Slow, synchronized footsteps walking up the gravel driveway. 2 sets. We held our breath and stared out the window, but saw nothing. Just the empty yard, empty street, silent neighborhood. We never told our parents. Never told anyone. But every Halloween after that, even years later, we'd get that same creeping sensation, the hair-raising feeling that someone was walking behind us. Someone who remembered us. Story 2. The girl in the white dress Halloween night had always been busy in my neighborhood. Even though the houses weren't huge, there were enough families that the entire place turned into a glowing maze of porch lights, fog machines, and kids yelling trick or treat until their voices cracked. I'd gotten used to the routine. From about 3 p.m. onward, my doorbell would ring nonstop. Costumes, candy buckets, parents in the background. Same thing every year. But 5 years ago, something happened that made Halloween feel permanently different for me. I didn't realize until the end of the night that I was being watched the whole time. The evening had started normally. I was handing out candy, trading a few jokes with the younger kids, complimenting costumes. All that. But toward the end of the rush, my doorbell rang again. When I opened it, I saw a single girl standing on my porch. She looked wrong. She had on a ripped white wedding dress, the kind worn in those ghost bride costumes. But what threw me off was her face. Painted completely white, no features except dark smeared circles around her eyes. And she wasn't a child, not a teenager either. She looked like she could have been in her late 20s. Yet she stood there silently, holding a tiny trick-or-treat bag like she was 8 years old. I glanced behind her and saw a man standing on the sidewalk. He wasn't wearing a costume, just dark clothes and a hood pulled over his head. They weren't talking. They weren't smiling. They were just there. I put candy in her bag. She turned without a word, and the man walked alongside her. They talked quietly, but I couldn't make out a single word. Something about their posture made my stomach tighten, but I tried to shake it off. Weird people exist. Halloween brings them out. I closed the door and went back inside. For the next hour, nothing unusual happened. The crowds thinned out. The streets got quiet. It was nearly 1 a.m. by the time I cleaned up, turned off the porch light, and went upstairs to shower. 15 minutes later, I stepped out of the shower and checked my phone. There was a notification from my doorbell camera. Motion detected 10 minutes ago. I expected the usual, maybe a cat, maybe a branch blowing the wind. But as soon as I opened the video, my heart lurched into my throat. For a split second, just a fraction of a second, the girl in the white dress stepped into frame. Her body angled toward the camera, like she hadn't realized it was there. And as soon as she noticed it, she jerked backward out of view, vanishing into the dark. My stomach dropped. Why was she here? Why alone? Why come back? I hurried downstairs and looked outside. The porch was empty. Dead silent. No cars. No people. I tried to convince myself she might have dropped something earlier, but deep down I knew that wasn't true. Then I heard it. Whispers. From inside my house. Slow, soft voices drifting through the hallway, coming from the opposite end of the house. Nowhere near the front door. 2 voices. A man and a woman. Talking to each other quietly, as if trying not to be heard. My blood ran cold. Without thinking, I bolted out my front door and sprinted down the street. I didn't stop until I was several blocks away. Only then did I call the police, hands shaking so badly I dropped my phone twice. As I waited for them to arrive, another notification popped up from the doorbell camera. I really didn't want to open it, but I forced myself to. This time it was clear. The girl and the man were rushing out of my house. Not from the front door, from inside the garage, exiting to the side door and disappearing into the night. The police arrived and searched everything. They found scrape marks on the garage entry lock, like someone had picked it. Inside the house, nothing was stolen, nothing touched. It was like they were walking around looking for someone, looking for me. Other neighbors later reported seeing the same pair around their houses earlier that night. In each situation, it seemed like the two were watching, waiting for the right moment. But I was the only one they actually entered the home of. To this day, they've never been identified, never been caught, never been seen again. But every Halloween since, whenever I hear a soft tap on the door or a whisper outside my window, part of me wonders if they ever really left, or if they're just waiting for another chance. Story 3. The calls in the dark room I had gotten home from work around 9:30 that night. I was tired, but not tired enough to sleep yet. So I grabbed a quick bowl of cereal, walked straight into my room, and settled in at my gaming setup. The plan was to stay up late with my friends. All of them worked a late shift and were supposed to hop on soon, even though they were running a bit behind. I finished eating, tossed the bowl aside, and launched the game while I waited. Halfway through a match, my phone started buzzing on the desk. I checked the screen expecting to see one of my buddies, and instead, it was some number I didn't recognize. I let it ring out, but not even 2 minutes later, the same number called again. That's when it felt weird. Scam calls usually don't double tap you like that, and definitely not from the same number. I declined it, but the phone lit up again immediately. A third call. At this point, I figured maybe one of my friends lost their phone or something and was using someone else's. So I answered, but I didn't speak right away. I wanted to hear who it was. Nothing. No voice. No breathing. But not dead silence, either. There was this faint rushing noise, the kind you'd hear somewhere outside on a windy street. I said, "Hello?" Still nothing. After 15 seconds of that uncomfortable silence, I hung up. A cold little knot formed in my stomach. Something about it felt off. The call stopped once I joined my friends in the voice chat, which somehow made it even creepier. We played for a couple hours, and I eventually forgot it even happened. Then around 2 a.m., everyone said goodnight and logged off. A minute after the call ended, my phone buzzed again, not a call, but a text. From the same number. Before I even unlocked the screen, I could see it was an image. I swiped it open, and every muscle in my body tightened. It was a photo of me sitting at my desk, taken from directly behind me, taken just moments earlier. My gaming chair, my monitor glow, the back of my head, it was all in the picture, and whoever took it had clearly been right behind the window in my room. I whipped around so fast my chair slammed into the desk. But of course the room was empty. The only silver lining was a window directly behind me. The blinds were half open. The picture had been taken from outside. I rushed over, yanked the blinds down, and checked the lock on the window. Everything was locked, but that didn't help. Someone had been inches from me, and I never heard a thing. My hands were shaking as I sent the picture to my group chat. I prayed one of them was messing with me. None of them joked this time. All of them told me to leave the house immediately or call the cops. I didn't leave. Stupid, maybe, but I needed to know if someone was still inside. I cracked my bedroom door open and peeked into the hallway. The house was silent, but it wasn't the comforting kind of silence. This was the kind that made your skin crawl. I stepped out carefully, listening. Then my heart dropped. The front door, visible at the end of the hall, was wide open. A void of darkness spilled inside the home like someone had slipped in quietly. I don't know why, but something in my brain screamed that whoever took that picture was still here. Before I could move, I felt it. A presence. Footsteps started, slow ones, coming down the hallway toward me. I sprinted back into my room and slammed the door, turning the lock. Immediately the footsteps reached the door. The handle jiggled, then turned. A slow, deliberate knock followed. 3 taps. He never spoke, just knocked again, then tested the handle one more time. I was already on the phone with 911, whispering to the operator, telling her someone was inside my house. I could barely breathe. Every second felt like it stretched forever, but the entire encounter at my door lasted maybe 30 seconds. Because suddenly, the footsteps retreated. The man backed away. Then silence. By the time police arrived, the house was empty. The officers did a sweep and confirmed the intruder slipped out the front door again. The number he used was a burner. No name. No location. No clues. Not even a shadow caught on camera. They told me to stay somewhere else for the night, and I did. But that didn't stop the paranoia. Sometimes, even now, I still get that sinking feeling in my gut that he might try again, maybe using a different number, maybe sending another picture. Nothing is stopping him from coming back. And the fact that he was inside the house long enough to stand behind my chair, watching me in my own room, makes me believe he wasn't just trying to scare me. He was waiting for the moment I was alone. Story 4. The man who loved my decoration. I live in a quiet, predictable suburban neighborhood where nothing dramatic ever seemed to happen. Halloween was always fun to observe from a distance, but I was never the type to decorate my entire yard like some people do. A few years ago, my sister gave me a small wooden ghost display, just a little cutout painted white with 2 black eyes. Every October, I'd stick in the front lawn and call it a day. One week before Halloween, I was home on a day off when I got a knock at the door. When I opened it, a man I'd never seen before was standing on the porch. Mid-40s, wiry build, short brown hair, a thick, puffy jacket that made him look broader than he was. He had an oddly wide smile, the kind that arrives too quickly before a normal person would even start smiling. He cheerfully told me he absolutely loved my Halloween decorations. I didn't know what to say. My decorations were literally just that one small ghost in the yard. Nothing unique. Nothing special. Still, I politely thanked him, and he kept on smiling in this overly enthusiastic way before turning and walking off down the sidewalk. Weird, but harmless, or so I thought. 2 days later, shortly after I got home from work, there was another knock. I hadn't even changed out my uniform yet, and when I opened the door, the same man was standing there. Same jacket. Same big, unsettling smile. He complimented my ghost again, almost word for word, then tried to start casual conversation as if we were old friends. I gave short, uninterested answers. He didn't seem to notice. He kept talking, and talking, and talking. Every instinct in my body was screaming that he wasn't just being friendly. He was probing, observing, trying to learn something about me or my home. I finally told him I was busy, and even then he lingered. He actually took a half step forward, like he wanted to keep me from closing the door. That was the moment my stomach tightened. I shut the door in his face. For several seconds, I saw his shadow through the frosted glass, just standing there, not leaving, almost deliberating whether to knock again. Finally, he walked away. No more visits happened for the rest of the week, and eventually the whole thing faded from my mind. Then Halloween night came. I had gotten off work early enough to hand out candy. It was a pleasant, normal evening. Crowds of kids in bright costumes, parents walking behind them, laughter echoing down the street. By around 7 p.m., the crowds thinned and the night quieted. I opened the door to give candy to a trio of little kids, and when I glanced across the street, something froze my blood. The man, standing on the sidewalk in the same thick, puffy jacket, completely still, facing my house, not walking with kids, not carrying a bag, not dressed up, just standing alone in the dark like he was watching me. I handed the candy out as calmly as I could and watched the kids leave. He didn't follow them. Instead, he simply turned and walked in the opposite direction, disappearing into the shadows between 2 houses. My skin crawled, but I convinced myself maybe I was overreacting. Hours passed. No more trick-or-treaters. I curled up on the couch and put on a horror movie, ironically enough. Sometime around 11, or maybe midnight, a sudden knock hit the front door. I jolted upright, heart racing. When I approached the door and peeked out, my breath caught. The same man was standing there, and he was holding something. A box. Plain, generic, cardboard. No ribbon, no wrapping, just a box. He saw the movement behind the door and immediately spoke, voice low and unsettlingly friendly. "I've got something for you," he said. "Nothing special. Just a little Halloween gift." He lifted the box a little, like an offering. Every detail about this felt wrong. The hour, the tone of his voice, the lack of expression in his eyes, the fact that I had never told him my name or anything about me, and yet he kept coming back. I didn't answer. I slowly backed away from the door, grabbed my phone, and dialed 911. While I spoke to the operator, he kept knocking. Light knocks, soft knocks, then a whisper through the door. You'll love it. Come on, open up. The knocks turned into slow tapping. A rhythm, patient, deliberate. After a minute, he stopped. The tapping faded. I peeked through the blinds and watched him walk away with the box still in his hands. Police arrived quickly. I stepped outside to speak to them, but my eyes kept scanning the dark street. Every tree, every shadow, every parked car felt like it could be hiding him. Officers found no sign of him. He had vanished as if he'd been waiting for the perfect moment to disappear. Even creepier, one of the officers pointed out something that made my stomach turn. The man hadn't approached from the street when he knocked. He'd come from the side of the house, toward the garage door entrance, exactly where he could have tried to break in. After the police left, I locked every door and window twice. I barely slept that night. The man never came back after that. No more knocks. No more compliments about my ghost decoration. No more unexpected visits. But every Halloween since then, I still get that cold, sinking feeling, the kind that whispers he might be standing out there again, just far enough back that I can't see him. Watching, waiting, and maybe this time he won't bring a gift. Story 5. The house at the end of the woods road. Halloween happened a few years back, when I was still in that awkward age where some kids insisted they were too old for trick-or-treating and others wanted one last year of fun. Most of my friends bailed that year, but my best friend Jason still wanted to go. So, did I. It wasn't even about the candy anymore. It was about walking around in the cold October air, seeing houses lit up with decorations, feeling that weird mix of excitement and fear you only get once a year. And yeah, ending the night with a mountain of candy didn't hurt either. Jason lived in a bigger neighborhood than mine. More houses, more decorations, more chaos. So I headed straight to his place after school. Neither of us put any real effort into our costumes. They were generic, thrown-together outfits because we didn't want to look like tryhards. By 4 p.m., we were already out the door, racing down driveways, visiting house after house, doing what kids do. It was fun. Simple, stupid fun. By 6:30, though, we had drifted far from Jason's area, way past his neighborhood, and into a part of town we barely recognized. The houses slowly became spaced farther apart. Fewer decorations, fewer lights, fewer people. Eventually, we ended up at the start of a long, narrow road that disappeared into a thick line of woods. Along that road were massive houses, hidden old mansions tucked under trees, the kind rich families owned but never seemed to actually live in. Naturally, we wanted to see what they were giving out for Halloween. Probably the good stuff. Probably king-size candy bars. We didn't even finish the neighborhood behind us. We just kept walking toward the mansions like idiots. The very first house had a porch light on, but nobody answered when we rang the bell. Same thing at the second house. Same thing at the third. And with every step deeper into that wooded road, the world seemed to go quieter, like the crickets were watching us, waiting for something. No parents, no kids, no voices, no movement, just silence and darkness settling in around us. We tried maybe 8 houses and got nothing. Then we saw it, a faint orange glow ahead, flickering through the trees. Halloween decorations. Lights. Finally, something normal. The house was huge, old, and had a few vintage-style decorations glowing on the lawn. It felt more alive than the others, at least from a distance. We hurried up the long driveway, stepping onto the wide wooden porch. And then we noticed the door. It was cracked open, just slightly, enough to see a sliver of darkness inside. I knocked first, then waited. Nothing. 30 seconds passed, long enough to feel wrong standing there. And just when we turned to leave, a shape appeared in the gap of the door. A man, older, maybe late 50s. Thin hair, wide eyes that didn't blink. He leaned into the gap with a smile that didn't look natural. "Happy Halloween," he said. "I've got candy inside for you." For a few seconds, we just stood there, waiting for him to grab a bowl and bring outside. That's what every normal adult did. But instead, He stepped back and gestured deeper into his dark hallway. "Come on in. Candy's just down the hall." Too heavy for an old man to carry. Jason didn't move. Neither did I. He opened the door wider, almost inviting us into the shadowy interior. The hallway behind him was pitch black. No TV on. No lights. No sounds of other people. Just a single porch light illuminating this man's strange, fixed smile. Jason tried to speak, some excuse, but his voice cracked. I nudged him, giving him the silent let's go message. We walked away fast, not daring to look back. We still don't know if he meant harm, but everything in our instincts screamed to get away. Unfortunately, we didn't immediately head back the way we came. Instead, we kept walking deeper down the wooded road, still talking about how weird that encounter was. We thought it would eventually connect to a main street or loop back into civilization. But it didn't. 15 minutes passed. The woods became pitch black. The road felt narrower, swallowed by trees. The silence thickened. Then, ahead of us, we saw a car parked along the right side of the road. No lights on. Engine off. Old, dented, and shadowed entirely by the trees. We would have turned around instantly, but we were already too close, maybe 20 feet away, before we even realized the shape was a car. We stuck to the opposite side of the road and walked past it slowly. I made the mistake of glancing into the side window, and I saw a face I recognized instantly. Wide eyes, unblinking, the same man from the open doorway. He was just sitting there, watching us, waiting. "Run," I whispered. Jason didn't question me. We bolted. As soon as we did, the old car's headlights blasted on behind us, cutting through the darkness like a spotlight. We ran harder than we ever had in our lives. Just 1 minute down the road, pure luck, we reached an intersection that led back into a normal neighborhood. The second our feet hit that street, we felt safer, even though we never stopped running. The car never followed. Maybe running told him we understood exactly what he was. Maybe he didn't want witnesses. Maybe we were too deep into a populated area for him to try anything. We made it all the way back to Jason's house without stopping, without telling anyone, without even catching our breath. We never mentioned it to our friends, not even to our parents. It became this silent, unspoken memory, one we both tried to bury. That was our last year trick-or-treating. Not because we were too old, but because on a Halloween night at the end of Forest Road, a man waited inside a dark mansion for 2 kids to step inside. And when we didn't, he waited for us in his car instead. We were lucky, terrifyingly lucky.